Hello everyone, my name is Ngawethu Ngaka, an intern on cycads conservation at South African National Biodiversity Institute at Kirstenbosch. I am here to present a vision on horticultural practices and the recovery of the critically endangered Encephalartos latifrons under the supervision of Mr. Pakamani Kaba, Karen Swart, and Professor John Donaldson. Cycads are amongst the most threatened species in the world to date, with over 50% of the 350 species listed as threatened. The global decline in cycad species is caused by numerous threats cycads face in the wild, and this makes in situ and ex situ conservation important. Here are some of the threats that cycads are facing in situ and ex situ. Figure 1 shows spots where 13 cycads were stolen at Kirstenbosch back in 2014. Figure number 2 shows pieces of Encephalartos species stem harvested for multi-purposes. Figure number 3 shows a damaged stem of the critically endangered Encephalartos latifrons harvested for traditional medicine. Poaching is a real crisis for South African cycads, as there were over 120 cycads removed from private lands and over 20 removed on conservation land. The challenges cycads are facing are compounded further by a number of biological factors, such as cycads have recalcitrant seeds and cannot be preserved in conventional seed banks, which makes it a problem for ex situ conservation of cycads. As a result, ex situ collections rely on living plants. Where possible, in situ conservation is preferred. This includes restoration efforts, either through reintroduction or reinforcement. Here are people who've been securing a future for Encephalartos latifrons. Mr. Harold Pearson, who reported a decline on low numbers in situ and started an ex situ collection at Kirstenbosch. Mr. Colin Fletcher, who did the in situ pollination of the remaining plants in the wild. Mr. John Winter, who reported low seed viability in Encephalartos latifrons, late 80s, unknown cause of low seed viability. Cynthia Giddy, who dedicated her life in protection of cycads and the other species. He was the first restoration pilot. Professor John Donaldson, who facilitated a stakeholders workshop and developed the first recovery action plan back in 2006. Jessica Da Silva, who did the DNA analysis of in situ and ex situ plants. Mr. Pakamani Kaba, who resolved a low seed viability problem in ex situ collections. Karen Swart, who did restoration ecological modeling studies. And Ngawethu Ngaka, who is currently developing ecological restoration protocol. Encephalartos latifrons still exist in small numbers in the wild and is well represented at Kirstenbosch, with 32 adult plants and plus minus 800 seedlings. Given that Encephalartos latifrons is well suited for reinforcement. The rationale for this vision is that Encephalartos latifrons has declined drastically and is critically endangered. The gazetted biodiversity management plan for critically endangered and endangered species of Encephalartos includes recovery plans. Current knowledge of cycads recovery and reintroduction is limited, with few success stories and almost no documented evidence. Therefore, developing a recovery and reintroduction methods and protocols for Encephalartos latifrons could inform the recovery of other cycad species, which will impactfully contribute on cycads conservation. The focus will be on horticultural aspects to complement the ecological studies. The cycad restoration and reintroduction have been notoriously poor, with high mortality. This is often due to desiccation under field conditions. Various methods have been tried, but mostly without good experimental protocols or sufficient monitoring. and evaluation of different treatments. Therefore, experimental work will be conducted to test the effects of different horticultural treatments on survival and growth under controlled and field conditions. Controlled experiment at Kirstenbosch will test seedling growth and survival under different simulated rainfall regimes and substrate designs to reduce desiccation. The species that will be used for the experiment will be the Encephalartos altensteinia, which is more common. Standard growing mix for cycads will be used as a control. Hydrogels will be experimented, coir and water-containing cocoons will also be experimented. Field plantings will also test the effects and practicality of irrigation, inclusion of hydrogels, the use of coir cocoons to increase water retention. The experimental work will provide a basis for a more evidence-based approach to cycads recovery. This project is expected to increase growth and survival of transplanted juveniles and seedlings to speed up population recovery. Further ideas on restoration are most welcome in order to save the declining species and avoid extinction as much as possible. And I thank you.